I didn't believe in miracles. Not because I was angry at God or had some deep theological reason. I just never saw one. Not in my life, not in my family, not in the world I grew up in. I believed in effort, in doing what you had to do, in surviving. But that night, sitting in the front seat of my car with my 2 kids asleep in the back, I ran out of things to believe in. It was late, past midnight, and the Walmart parking lot in Charlotte, North Carolina was nearly empty. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. I had parked in the far corner, away from the cameras, away from the judgment. I didn't want anyone to see us. I didn't want to see myself. The windows were fogged from our breath. My son, Micah, was curled up under a blanket with his head against the door. My daughter, Ava, had her legs tucked beneath her, her thumbs still in her mouth. She was 6. He was 9, and they were sleeping in a car because I had nowhere else to take them. I stared at the eviction notice on the dashboard. Folded, unfolded, folded again. I had read it so many times the words had lost meaning. Failure to pay, vacate immediately, legal action. I had tried everything, called every number, filled out every form, begged every friend, but nothing came through. I had $7.42 in my bank account. My phone was at 3%, and I had no plan for tomorrow. I leaned my head against the steering wheel and let the silence swallow me. I didn't cry. I had cried enough. I didn't scream. I was too tired. I just sat there, numb, empty, and completely alone. And then, without thinking, I whispered something into the dark. If anyone's out there, I can't do this anymore. That was it. No fancy words, no prayer, just a whisper, a surrender, a last breath of hope I didn't even know I had left. And that's when something shifted. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real. The air in the car felt different, warmer, still, like someone had stepped in and closed the door behind them. My chest, which had been tight for days, loosened. My hands stopped shaking. My thoughts, which had been racing, slowed to a whisper. I looked at my kids, still asleep, still breathing, still mine. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew deep in my bones that I wasn't alone anymore. And that was the beginning. Not of a solution, not of a rescue, but of something I couldn't explain, something I would later call a miracle. But that night, it was just a whisper in the dark. And someone heard me. Before everything fell apart, I thought I was doing okay. I had a decent job at a mid-sized marketing firm in Charlotte. I wasn't rich, but I paid my bills on time. I packed lunches for my kids, showed up to parent-teacher conferences, and even managed to keep a smile on my face most days. I was the kind of woman people described as strong, the kind who figured things out, the kind who didn't ask for help. I didn't grow up in church. My parents weren't religious. God was more of a concept than a presence, something people leaned on when they didn't have answers. I didn't judge them, I just didn't need that. I had plans, I had spreadsheets, I had control. Or so I thought. The first crack came when my hours were cut. Temporary, they said, just until the next quarter. I adjusted. I canceled cable. I stopped buying takeout. I told the kids we were doing a no-spend challenge like it was a game. Then came the layoffs. I was one of the last to go. I remember sitting in that HR office, nodding politely while they handed me a severance packet and a box for my things. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked out, got in my car, and drove home in silence. I told myself I'd bounce back. I had experience. I had a resume. I had connections. But weeks turned into months and the job offers didn't come. I applied to everything from executive roles to cashier positions. Nothing stuck. The bills piled up. The severance ran out. I sold my furniture piece by piece. I stopped answering calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I told my kids we were downsizing when we moved into a one-bedroom apartment. I told myself it was temporary. But deep down, I was unraveling. I started waking up with a knot in my stomach. I'd stare at the ceiling, wondering how I got here. I felt like a failure as a mother, as a woman, as a human being. I avoided mirrors. I avoided friends. I avoided hope. I still tried to act like I had it together. I smiled at the grocery store. I posted old photos on social media so no one would ask questions. But inside, I was drowning. And the worst part, I had no one to blame but myself. I had built my life like a house of cards, carefully, strategically, and completely on my own strength. And now, with one gust of wind, it was collapsing. I didn't know it then, but I was about to learn something that would change everything. Control is an illusion, and sometimes the breaking is the beginning of the miracle. I remember the sound of the envelope hitting the floor. It was a soft sound, barely noticeable, but it felt like a bomb had gone off in my chest. I already knew what it was. I didn't need to open it. I had been avoiding the landlord's calls for weeks, dodging the knock on the door, pretending everything was fine for the kids. But now, there it was, final notice. Eviction. I sat on the edge of the couch, holding the letter in my hands, staring at the words like they were written in another language. You are required to vacate the premises within 72 hours. That was it. No apology, no sympathy, just a deadline. Micah and Ava were in the bedroom, watching cartoons on my old laptop. I could hear them laughing, innocent, unaware. I didn't know how to tell them. I didn't even know how to breathe. I had tried everything. I applied for rental assistance, but the waiting list was months long. I called churches, nonprofits, even old coworkers. Everyone said the same thing. I'm so sorry. I wish I could help. I sold my last piece of jewelry the week before. I had $11.08 in my account and no paycheck coming. I walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and slid down the wall until I hit the tile. I buried my face in my hands and let the tears come. Not quiet ones, not graceful ones, the kind that make your whole body shake, the kind that leave you gasping for air. I wasn't just losing an apartment. I was losing the last shred of stability I had left. I was losing the illusion that I could fix this, that I could protect my kids, that I was strong enough. I didn't pray, I didn't scream at God, I didn't even think about him. He wasn't part of my life, not really. I had always believed in being realistic, in doing what needed to be done, but now there was nothing left to do. That night, I packed what I could into the trunk of my car, blankets, snacks, a few changes of clothes. I told the kids we were going on a little adventure. Ava clapped. Micah looked at me sideways, like he knew I was lying but didn't want to say it out loud. We drove around until it got dark, then parked behind a 24-hour Walmart. I reclined the seats, tucked the kids in, and sat in the front with the engine off and the windows cracked. I stared at the ceiling of the car for hours, listening to the hum of the streetlights, the occasional shopping cart rolling by, the soft breathing of my children. And I thought, this is it. This is how far I've fallen. I didn't know it then, but that night would become the line in the sand. The moment everything broke. The moment I finally let go of the life I thought I was supposed to have. The miracle hadn't come yet, but the unraveling had begun. And sometimes, that's where miracles start. I stared at his number for 20 minutes. Jordan's contact was still saved in my phone. I hadn't deleted it. I told myself it was for the kids. But the truth, I think some part of me still wanted him to care, still hoped he'd wake up one day and remember we existed. That night after the kids fell asleep in the car, I sat in the front seat with my phone in my hand, thumb hovering over the call button. I was out of options. No money, no job, no home. I thought maybe if I just tell him how bad it is, maybe he'll help. Maybe he'll send something. Maybe he'll remember he's their father. I pressed the button. It rang once. Then twice. Then straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I just sat there, staring at the screen, feeling the heat rise in my chest. Not from hope, but from shame. I hated that I had reached for him. Hated that I still wanted him to show up. Hated that I was still waiting for a man who had already made his choice. I turned off the phone and threw it in the glove box. That was the last time I ever tried to call him. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on the window. I jolted upright, heart racing. For a second, I thought it was security, or worse, someone trying to hurt us. But when I looked up, I saw a woman, mid-50s, curly gray hair, kind eyes. She was holding a paper bag and a cup of coffee. I cracked the window. "Sorry to startle you," she said gently. "I saw you here last night. I come here early to walk before work. I don't know, I felt like I should bring you something." She handed me the bag. Inside was a warm egg sandwich and 2 juice boxes. "I'm not trying to pry," she added, "but if you need help, I know someone." Her name was Marla. She worked at a local community center a few blocks away. She wasn't pushy. She didn't ask questions. She just gave me her number and said, "If you want to talk, I'm around." I didn't call her that day, but I didn't throw the number away either. 2 days later, I was sitting in the car, trying to figure out how to stretch $5 into dinner, when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello." "Hi, is this Alina Matthews?" "Yes." "This is Officer Rayner with the Charlotte Police Department. I'm calling about your ex-husband, Jordan Matthews." My stomach dropped. "What about him?" "There's been an incident. He was involved in a car accident in Phoenix. He's stable but unconscious. You were listed as his emergency contact." I didn't know what to say. I hadn't spoken to Jordan in over a year. He had erased us from his life. And now, suddenly, I was the one they called. "Do you have children together?" the officer asked. "Yes, 2. "I'm sorry to ask this, but do you know if he had any life insurance or assets? We're trying to locate next of kin." I hung up the phone in a daze. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel anything. Just numb. But that call stirred something I hadn't expected. A door. A possibility. A consequence. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I knew it wasn't random. That evening, I finally called Marla. She met me at the community center with a warm smile and a hug that felt like it reached into my soul. She didn't ask for my story. She just listened. She gave the kids snacks and let them play in the rec room while I sat in her office, unraveling. "I don't know what I'm doing," I said, voice cracking. "I don't even know why I called you." She smiled. "Because you're tired of pretending you're okay." I nodded, tears spilling down my cheeks. She handed me a tissue and said something I'll never forget. "Alina, I don't know what you believe, but I believe God sees you, and I believe He sent me here for you." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say I didn't believe in that kind of thing, but I couldn't, because deep down, something in me wanted to believe it was true. That night, she helped me apply for emergency housing. She gave me a gas card. She even offered to watch the kids while I went to a job interview she had lined up through a friend. But the part that shook me the most. As I was leaving, she said, "I've been praying for you since the first night I saw your car. I didn't know your name then, but I do now." And for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not by a system. Not by a stranger. But by something bigger. I never thought I'd say this out loud, but there was a moment, just one, when I considered giving Ava to someone else. It was the 3rd night in the car. She had a fever. Her cheeks were flushed, her body burning up, and I had no medicine, no thermometer, no way to know how bad it was. I wrapped her in my coat and held her close, whispering lullabies I barely remembered from when she was a baby. Micah sat in the front seat, staring out the window, silent. He didn't ask questions anymore. He just watched me, like he was trying to figure out if I was still strong enough to carry all of this. That night I thought about Marla, about how she had offered to help, about how she had mentioned a foster family she knew just in passing. "They're good people," she'd said. "They've taken in kids temporarily before, just until things stabilize." I hated myself for even thinking about it, but I was desperate. Ava was sick. I had no way to help her, and the thought of her getting worse while I sat helpless in a parking lot made me feel like I was already failing her. I didn't call Marla, but I stared at her number for a long time. And I whispered, "God, if you're real, please don't make me do this." A week later, I stopped by the community center to pick up a food box Marla had arranged. She wasn't there, but one of the volunteers, an older man named Mr. Darrell, handed me the bag with a warm smile. As I turned to leave, I noticed a stack of papers on the counter. One of them had my name on it. I froze. It was a printed email from a caseworker. It read, "Alina Matthews is still living in her vehicle with 2 minors. No confirmed employment. No permanent address. Recommend escalation to CPS if no change within 10 days." I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I grabbed the paper and walked out without saying a word. My hands were shaking. My throat was dry. I sat in the car and stared at the words until they blurred. They were going to take my kids. I had done everything I could. I had begged, I had worked, I had sacrificed, and still it wasn't enough. I wasn't just losing my home. I was about to lose the only thing I had left. That night, I pulled into a gas station on the edge of town. I had just enough money to put $5 in the tank. As I stood there, pumping gas, a man approached me. He looked rough, torn jacket, weathered face, eyes that had seen too much. I tensed, ready to protect my kids if I had to. But he didn't ask for money. He said, "You don't look like you belong here." I blinked. "Excuse me." He pointed to the backseat. "You've got bobbies in that car. You're not like the rest of us." I didn't know what to say. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled $20 bill. "Take it," he said. "I've been where you are. Someone helped me once. Now it's my turn." I shook my head. "I can't." He pressed it into my hand. "Don't argue with Grace." Then he walked away. I stood there, stunned, holding the money like it was sacred. That was the first time I felt something shift. Not a miracle, not yet, but a crack in the darkness, a whisper of hope. The next morning, my phone rang. It was a blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. "Ms. Matthews, this is Detective Laura Bennett with the Charlotte PD. I'm calling about your ex-husband, Jordan." My heart stopped. "He's awake," she said. "He's asking for you." I didn't know what to feel. Relief, anger, fear. "He's in stable condition," she continued. "But he's asked to see the kids, and he's asked to sign over full custody to you." I sat down on the curb outside the gas station, phone pressed to my ear, the world spinning. "He said he made a mistake," she added. "He said he wants to make things right." I didn't believe him, not really, but something about the timing, about the way everything was unraveling, made me wonder if this was more than coincidence. Maybe it was the beginning of something I couldn't yet name. Not a miracle, but maybe the setup for one. I didn't want to see him. When the hospital called again, they said Jordan was awake and asking for me. I told them I couldn't come. I told them I had no way to get to Arizona. I didn't tell them the real reason. I didn't want to look into the eyes of the man who abandoned us and pretend I was okay. But then something strange happened. 2 days later, a woman showed up at the community center. She was tall, elegant, with silver-streaked braids and a calmness that filled the room before she even spoke. "Are you Alina?" she asked. I nodded, cautious. "My name is Naomi. I'm Jordan's aunt. I raised him after his mother passed. I flew in from Phoenix. He asked me to find you." I didn't know what to say. I hadn't even known Jordan had an aunt. She sat across from me, folded her hands, and said, "He's not the same man you knew. He's broken, and he knows it." I wanted to scream, so am I. But I stayed quiet. She reached into her purse and handed me an envelope. Inside was a check, $5,000. I stared at it like it was a bomb. "He asked me to give you this," she said. "No strings, just help." I didn't take it. Not yet. I didn't trust it. But I couldn't ignore the way my hands trembled, or the way my heart cracked open just a little. I had tried so hard to protect them, to shield them from the truth, to keep their world intact even as mine crumbled. But kids aren't blind. They see more than we think. That night, after Naomi left, Micah sat beside me in the car and asked, "Is Dad really in the hospital?" I froze. "Who told you that?" "I heard you on the phone," he said, "and I saw the check." I looked at him, my sweet, observant boy, and realized I couldn't lie anymore. Yes, I said quietly. He's in Arizona. He was in an accident. Micah didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just looked down at his hands and whispered, "Why didn't he call me?" I had no answer. He turned to the window and said, "I don't care if he's sorry. He left us." And in that moment, I saw it, the wound, the one I couldn't bandage, the one that would take more than time to heal. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. And I sat there, helpless, as my son's heart hardened in front of me. The next morning, Naomi called. "I know you're overwhelmed," she said, "but I want to help. I have a house in Charlotte. It's empty. You and the kids can stay there for as long as you need." I didn't know how to respond. It sounded too good to be true. A house, for free, from the family of the man who left me in a parking lot. But I was tired, the kids were tired, and the car was no longer safe. So I said yes. When we pulled into the driveway later that evening, I felt like I was dreaming. It was small but clean, 2 bedrooms, a working kitchen, a real bed. Ava ran through the hallway squealing. Micah stayed quiet, but I saw the way his shoulders dropped, the way he finally exhaled. That night, after they fell asleep, I sat on the floor of the living room and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I didn't know how to feel. Grateful. Suspicious. Hopeful. I didn't trust any of it, not yet. But I knew this, something was shifting. It had been 2 weeks since we moved into Naomi's house. The kids were sleeping in real beds again. I had started a part-time job at a local print shop. Things were quieter, but not peaceful, not yet. One afternoon, while unpacking a box of donated clothes in the hallway closet, I found an envelope wedged behind a stack of old linens. It was yellowed, sealed, and addressed in Jordan's handwriting. "To Alina, if you ever end up here." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter, not long, just a few lines. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but if you're reading this, it means I failed you again. I left because I was drowning in something I never told you about. I didn't want to drag you down with me, but I see now I already did. I'm sorry. There's more to the story. Ask Naomi." I sat on the floor, letter in hand, heart pounding. What was he hiding? That evening, after the kids went to bed, I found Naomi in the kitchen, folding laundry. "I found a letter," I said. "From Jordan. He said there's more to the story, that I should ask you." She didn't look surprised. She set the towel down and sat across from me. "Alina," she said gently, "Jordan didn't just leave because he was selfish. He left because he was scared." "Scared of what?" She hesitated. Then, "He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder 2 years before he left. He didn't tell you because he was ashamed. He thought he could manage it. But when the business started failing, he spiraled. He started gambling. He got into debt. He didn't want you to see him like that." I stared at her, stunned. "He thought disappearing would protect you," she said. "He didn't realize it would destroy you." I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. All this time, I thought he left because he didn't care, because I wasn't enough. But the truth was more complicated, more human. And somehow, more heartbreaking. The next day, I got a call from a woman named Lena, who said she ran a small creative agency downtown. She'd seen my resume through a friend of Marla's and wanted to meet. I showed up early, dressed in borrowed clothes and nerves. But when I walked into the office, something felt off. There were no desks, no staff, just Lena sitting at a table with a laptop and a Bible. "I'm sorry," I said, confused. "I thought this was a job interview." She smiled. "It is, just not the kind you expected." She slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, nonprofit registration forms, grant applications, a mission statement. "I've been praying for someone to help me build this," she said. "A program for single mothers, job training, counseling, childcare. I have the vision. I need someone who's lived it." I stared at her, speechless. "I don't have much to offer yet," she added, "but I believe God sent you here, and I believe He's not done writing your story." I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know what I believed. But something in me whispered, "Pay attention, this isn't random." It was a rainy Thursday when Naomi handed me a small box. "I found this in Jordan's apartment," she said. "He never mailed it, but I think you should read it." Inside was a letter, dated 6 months before his accident. The handwriting was shaky, like he'd written it in a rush or through tears. "Elena, I don't know how to say this. I've started this letter 100 times. I'm sorry, not just for leaving, but for lying, for pretending I was okay. I was drowning in debt, I was gambling, I was drinking, I was ashamed. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I didn't know how to be loved by someone like you. I thought disappearing would protect you, but I see now I just broke you. If I ever get the chance to make it right, I will. Tell the kids I love them. Tell them I never stopped. Jordan." I read it 3 times. Then I folded it and placed it in my coat pocket like it was something holy. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know if I could forgive him. But for the first time, I saw him, not as the villain in my story, but as a man who was just as broken as I was. And that realization undid me. It was supposed to be a normal night. I had just finished dinner, boxed mac and cheese again, and the kids were watching a movie in the living room. I stepped outside to take a call from Lena about the nonprofit paperwork. That's when I saw the envelope taped to the front door. It was from Child Protective Services. I opened it with shaking hands. A scheduled home visit, in 3 days. I dropped to my knees on the porch, the letter fluttering to the ground. My chest tightened, my vision blurred, I couldn't breathe. I had done everything right. I had taken the job. I had moved into a home. I had kept my kids safe. And still, they were coming. I stumbled back inside, locked the door, and collapsed on the kitchen floor. I screamed into a dish towel so the kids wouldn't hear. I screamed until my throat burned. And then I whispered, "God, where are you? Why are you letting this happen?" Stillness. Silence. Nothing. The next morning, I opened the door to find a man standing on the porch. He was tall, maybe late 40s, with kind eyes and a clipboard in his hand. "Elena Matthews," he asked. I nodded, bracing myself. "I'm David, from CPS. I know I'm early, but I was in the area and thought I'd stop by." I froze. "The visit isn't until Friday." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to meet you first, off the record." I stepped aside, unsure what else to do. He walked in, looked around, and smiled. "You've made this place feel like home." I didn't know what to say. He sat at the kitchen table and pulled out a folder. "I've read your file, I've seen the reports, but I wanted to see the person behind the paper." I sat across from him, hands clenched. He looked me in the eye and said, "You're not failing your kids, you're fighting for them, and that matters." I blinked back tears. He closed the folder. "I'm not here to take them, I'm here to help you keep them." And just like that, something cracked open in me. Not a miracle. Not yet. But maybe mercy. It was 2:17 a.m. I remember the time because I had just checked my phone, hopping for a message, a sign, anything. The house was quiet. The kids were asleep. The air was heavy with that kind of silence that feels like it's pressing down on your chest. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, feeling like I was unraveling from the inside out. I had done everything I could. I had taken the job. I had moved into the house. I had shown up for the CPS visit. I had smiled when I wanted to scream. I had held my children together with trembling hands. And still, I felt like I was losing. I whispered, "God, if you're real, if you've ever been real, I need you now." I didn't expect anything to happen. I didn't even know if I believed he was listening. But then, something shifted. The room didn't change, but the atmosphere did. It was like the air itself exhaled. I felt warmth radiating, not from the heater, but from somewhere deeper. It wrapped around me like a blanket. My heart, which had been pounding for weeks, slowed. My thoughts, which had been racing, stilled. And then I felt it. A presence. Not imagined, not emotional, real. I couldn't see him, but I knew. Jesus was in the room. I didn't hear words, but I felt them, like they were being written across my soul. I see you. I never left. You are not forgotten. Tears poured down my face, not from fear, not from sadness, but from something I hadn't felt in years. Belonging. I fell to my knees on the floor, hands trembling, heart wide open. And for the first time in my life, I prayed, not out of desperation, but out of surrender. Jesus, I believe you're here. I don't know what to do, but I give you everything, all of it, my pain, my past, my kids, my future, it's yours. And in that moment, something broke. Not me. The weight. The shame. The fear. It lifted. I didn't get a vision. I didn't hear angels. But I knew deep in my bones that I had just encountered the living God. And nothing would ever be the same. It's been a year now. Micah just turned 10. Ava lost her first tooth. We have a little apartment with chipped paint and a leaky faucet, and I've never loved a place more. Jordan and I talk occasionally. He's in therapy. He sends letters to the kids. I don't know what the future holds for him, but I've forgiven him. Fully, freely, finally. Naomi still checks in. Marla still brings groceries. Lena and I are expanding the table into a second location. And every time I walk into that room full of women, I remember the night I whispered into the dark. I didn't believe in miracles. Not until that moment. Not until the silence broke. Not until peace filled the room. Not until Jesus walked in. And now I tell everyone. He still walks into rooms. Even the ones we think are too broken. Even the ones we've locked from the inside. Even the ones we've given up on. Especially those. Because that's where miracles begin. If you're reading this and you're still in the car, still in the silence, still in the place where everything feels lost, this story is for you. I didn't believe in miracles, not until I became one. He sees, he hears, he comes. And when he does, everything changes. This isn't just my story, it's yours too. Because the same God who walked into my room is already standing outside yours. All you have to do is open the door. If this story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Subscribe. Let someone else know their comeback is still possible, and it might just start today.